What you're about to view is a child safety workshop. This is a training that's going to walk through the why, the what, and the how. But let's start with the who. My name is Gregory Love, and I'm one of the founders and directors of Ministry Safe and Abuse Prevention Systems. But before that, I was a partner and still am in the law firm Love & Norris. Now, together with my wife and law partner, Kimberly Norris, we've been doing almost exclusively child sexual abuse legal work for the better part of the last 30 years. Now, what that means in a law practice doing sexual abuse work is Kimberly and I are both civil trial lawyers. And as civil trial lawyers, we stand over train wrecks. Now, we get invited to that train wreck sometimes by a victim or a victim's family, sometimes a board of directors, sometimes a youth sport organization or an insurance carrier. But regardless, when we arrive at that train wreck, as civil trial lawyers, we bring with us a lens, which is called standard of care. It's a snappy lawyer way of saying, this is what you should be doing. So when I stand over that train wreck with that lens of what you should be doing, oftentimes what I find is, this is in fact what you were doing. So after 30 years of standing over train wrecks and finding this is what you should have been doing, and that difference between what you should have been doing and what you in fact were doing is what gives rise to liability. Okay, we call it negligence, sometimes gross negligence. After standing over 30 years of train wrecks, you start to see patterns in this. Now, for an organization that has this experience, they don't get to see a pattern. They see a set of facts that they get to experience and hopefully navigate it well. But see, as a civil trial lawyer standing over 30 years of train wrecks, I get to see the patterns. And that's good news, actually. Because see, if something has a pattern, that means it's predictable. And if something is predictable, it's preventable. The purpose of this training is to give you the benefit of 30 years overseeing these patterns and showing you if something is predictable, it's preventable. This is the evaluation of that information to allow us to know what do we do to make this circumstance preventable in your particular program. This training is going to be broken up into segments. It's going to start with facts versus misconceptions, the grooming process. It's going to move into the what we do, an effective safety system, and then how we do it, how to access the resources and use those resources to put together a safety system which fits the type of program and the populations that you serve. So let's start at the beginning. Framing out this particular issue and why a child safety workshop, it's important to ask and answer the question as it relates to child sexual abuse. Why does this continue to be a problem? Okay, we've been doing this work for 30 years. Why is it that this problem hasn't come to our attention, begged us to understand the patterns to this, and do the things necessary to make sure this is never a problem again? Because see, I'm getting just as many phone calls, if not more, in the crisis response type of work that we do. This continues to be a problem. Why? So of the train wrecks that I've stood over, here's what I have learned from experience. We continue to have this problem because we don't understand this problem. And because we don't understand this problem, here's what I find. Our efforts are not related to the risk. Let me break that down a little bit. What do I mean by our efforts? See, entities that are serving children in vulnerable populations, they're doing something to protect those populations. I have yet to walk into an organization and ask the question, what are you doing here to protect your vulnerable populations? And have somebody say to me, not much, nothing actually. Okay, I've never heard that. What I'll instead hear is somebody who's enthusiastic about the mission of this organization telling me, well, these are the things we're doing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, to protect these populations in our care. Unfortunately, that list that you've just made me oftentimes is not related to the risk. You're building the wrong fence. When you want to protect something, you might fence it. Okay, but here's fence 101 for you. The type of fence you build is driven by what you want to keep out. Let's say that you've got a garden. You worked hard on it. You want to protect it. You want to build a fence. Okay, well, what type of fence do you build? Well, the type of fence you build is going to be driven by what you want to keep out of your garden. So let's say you want to keep out your neighbor's livestock. All right? If that's the type of risk you've identified, what type of fence do you build? Metal stakes, barbed wire, hopefully close to a plug. See, that barbed wire fence is appropriate for that type of risk, the livestock. But see, your barbed wire fence, no matter how well you build it, is absolutely worthless at keeping the bunnies out of your garden. That's what I see when I'm evaluating most organizations that are in or near the ditch. We're building the wrong fence. We've got a beautiful barbed wire fence while the bunnies are ripping our programs. That's what I want to try to explain, is to help our entities understand this continues to be a problem because we're building the wrong fence. I want to help you understand what I mean by the wrong fence, understand then what I mean by the right fence. And once we understand the right fence, how can I access the tools and resources to develop that right fence that fits my type of program? Now, before we get started, what I want to do first is I want to check the back of the math book. Well, what's at the back of the math book? Now, high school algebra reminds me that what was at the back of the math book was a beautiful thing. It was they put the answers at the back of the math book. Now, why that was beautiful for me is that here's this hard problem. If you can tell me in advance what the answer is, then I'm going to work a little hard. I'll struggle a little more. Okay, now, at the back of the book, they didn't tell me how to work the problem. But if you told me where I'm supposed to land the plane in this hard problem, I'll struggle a little bit more. So I don't want us to have this very long training and make you struggle without an understanding of where we're going to land the plane. So checking the back of the math book on this hard problem, the answer is the grooming process. Okay, the answer at the back of the book is the grooming process. More specifically, it's the grooming process of the preferential offender. Now, if you've never heard that term or that grouping of words together, the grooming process of the preferential offender, then this is the training for you, because there's a good chance if you've never heard that term, you've got a barbed wire fence and you might have a bunny problem. All right? So the grooming process is the answer. Now, that's not teaching us how to work the problem. We're going to, through the course of this training, work the problem. But I want to make another observation about this fence before I move on. One of the compounding problems to this is we've built the wrong fence, but we think we're fine. If I've built the wrong fence, when am I ever going to make a change? Well, I'm only going to make a change if somebody alerts me to my error or I have a crisis that reveals my error. My goal here is for us to have information so we can evaluate our fence, put the right fence in place without there having to be a crisis that reveals the same information in a very rude way. All right? So we're building the wrong fence. We want to understand what is the right fence, and we want to know how to put that together unique to my particular program or the populations that I serve. Because the big idea on this, we will never accidentally get this right. Okay? We will never be accidentally excellent at protecting children from child sexual abuse. We must have information that helps us understand error and then understand how we do this correctly, because our climate continues to change. Insurance carriers are requiring a more refined answer to what are you doing to protect your vulnerable populations. Legislatures are starting to require change. Licensure is beginning to change. All of these people that are making requirements of you understand this risk and the fence. We need to understand this because the children are relying on us, not the legislature, licensure, or anyone else. That concludes our introduction. So here we go. In the next segment, we're going to talk about facts versus misconceptions.